Hi there. This is Brooke Boyd reporting on Escape, Chapter 6 of Coercion and its Fallout by Murray Sidman. I'll be presenting a summary of the chapter. Let's jump into it. So, we start off by talking about contingency analysis. In contingency analysis, we analyze using our classic ABC data, antecedent behavior consequence, to see what happens when we make changes to the antecedent. How does that change the behavior? What happens when we change the consequence? So in contingency analysis, we analyze what happens when we change antecedents and consequences and how that affects behavior. So an example of this in my life might be that my husband typically doesn't clean the house much, let's say, and afterwards, he'll do it if I ask reluctantly, and then afterwards, he doesn't really notice the house is cleaner. It doesn't really have much of an effect on him. So I noticed that when I ask my husband to clean, and he does so, and I get him a 6-pack of beer after, he begins to clean more often and a little less begrudgingly. So in contingency analysis, if behavior change is not occurring, a different change to the contingency is needed. So look at your data to see if it is not working. So we're going to shift gears now, talk about negative reinforcement. So as we know, negative reinforcement is talking about, well, in the word negative, the removal of something that increases the likelihood of a behavior recurring. So negative reinforcement will also reinforce behaviors with the escape function. So let's look at this picture of this dog who made a mess of some kid's homework. Dog ate my homework. So if you fed your homework to the dog, you are negatively reinforced as the kid, right? Because your homework is gone. And the function of the behavior was escape, has been reinforced because the homework is gone. So you're more likely to try to feed your homework to the dog again in the future. So this is exactly how escape is tying into negative reinforcement. Now let's go ahead and look at that in comparison with punishment. So as we said, negative reinforcement is the removal of something that increases the likelihood of behavior recurring, and that negative reinforcement will reinforce behaviors with escape function. So now let's talk about punishment. So in punishment procedures, it is the removal or addition of something that will decrease the likelihood of a behavior recurring. So when we are talking about punishment, we're also considering an aversive stimulus. So that is what they're going to end up having in common, the use of aversive stimuli for behavior change. So in negative reinforcement, like we said, the dog ate the kid's homework, and with the homework gone, the feeding the dog behavior has now been reinforced. But the aversive stimuli was present. It was the homework. So the aversive my apologies, is the continuous strand and theme that we'll see here throughout punishments and negative reinforcement. So they really do tie together pretty succinctly, you'll see. So let's look at all this aversive stimuli that I threw out here that we might encounter in our lives. So let's say speeding ticket, for example. You escape the speeding ticket by slowing down. That is negatively reinforced. And if you are speeding, speeding is punished by the ticket. So you escape a speeding ticket by slowing down. So the speeding ticket acts as a aversive stimuli as in both the negative reinforcement scenario and as in the punishment scenario. In the dog barking, let's say if you pet a barking dog, the barking will stop. And now petting the dog has been negatively reinforced. Barking is removed. But if the dog barks, It is a punisher for any behavior other than petting the dog. So you escape punishment by petting that dog who's very loud and needy. Another real life example of mine. In, let's say, getting burned, if you're using an oven mitt, you avoid or escape getting a burn um, by using the oven mitt when you take your cake out of the oven. When you do not use the oven mitt, you are punished by getting burned. You escape punishment by using an oven mitt. So again, the aversive stimuli is seen as a negative negative reinforcement and in punishment contingencies. And his last very personal example, an obnoxious aunt. So let's say at Thanksgiving, your obnoxious aunt will talk to you about conspiracy theories if you are near her. You escape talking to your aunt by not being near her. If you are near her, you are punished by hearing conspiracy theories. So the punishment and negative reinforcement cycles are all about escape and things revolving around the escape function and aversive stimuli. So we all know punishment is still an effective means of behavior change. It does produce behavior change. But let's go ahead and touch base again on why it may not be the most effective choice. So the person being punished is seeking for punishment to stop through whatever means. And this has been, repeated in laboratories and across species. So the punishee seeking for punishment to stop at whatever cost. So therefore, in that almost sense of desperation, new maladaptive behavior or higher intensity maladaptive behavior or higher rate of maladaptive behavior may occur while the punishee is trying to escape the punishment. So with whatever behavior the punishee uses to actually escape punishment, that behavior will now become, although incidentally, reinforced. So keeping that in mind, we're going to move into comparing reinforcement contingencies. So there are some other side effects of reinforcement that are definitely worth comparing here. So we've talked a good bit about negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is effective in eliciting target behavior. However, aversive stimuli increases stress. So if the behavior is happening constantly to be escaping something, then the subject is likely to be stressed and is less likely to retain new information and demonstrate target behavior when the negative reinforcement contingency ends. Unlike in positive reinforcement, although it is also effective in eliciting behavior change, the subject is not stressed. And due to the subject remaining in a neutral or relaxed state, they're able to obtain new information. Subjects are more likely to demonstrate target behavior still when the contingency ends when positive reinforcement is used for behavior change. And to jump in a little bit further about some other side effects of negative reinforcement contingencies. If negative reinforcement contingency continues long term, and remember when we're thinking about that, a subject is eliciting behavior to constantly be escaping and avoiding an aversive stimuli. So the subject's interest in other behaviors may decrease because they're very focused on avoiding that aversive stimuli. And then the environments that are associated with negative reinforcements will often become a condition or generalized aversive stimuli themselves. So if a subject knows that a particular room or location is where this negative reinforcement contingency occurs, they will then generalize and want to avoid and escape that environment. So there are some accidental contingencies that might be shaped up there. And nope, that's my last point. Thank you. Avoiding these environments is reinforced by the function of escape. With that being said, let's dive into some other fun facts about escape, the function. So whatever behavior a subject was engaging in prior to negative reinforcement becomes, or maybe will now be a punisher for them, because that is now also going to be associated with the aversive stimuli and escaping from it. So an if criteria for negative reinforcement is not met, then a subject is actually being punished by the aversive stimuli still being present. So if a subject is not able to fully escape aversive stimuli um, and have the process of negative reinforcement for that escape behavior, then they're actually going to be punished by the aversive stimuli still being present. So again, we're saying how aversive stimuli creates a cycle between punishment and negative reinforcement. And lastly, an environment that a subject escapes from successfully will therefore punish any behavior that takes them back to the environment. So, as mentioned previously, any environment that is associated with the negative reinforcement contingency becomes a generalized aversive stimuli itself. So, to expand on that, that environment, when the subject escapes from there successfully or successfully avoids it, it punishes, then any behavior that will take them back to the environment will be punished. And with that, I want to ask my discussion questions. How can accidental contingencies resulting in superstition occur during negative reinforcement contingencies? And two, can you think of an example in your life where you are coerced by social contingencies? Remember thinking about negative reinforcement, punishment, and aversive stimuli in that cycle. Thank you for listening. Again, this is Brooke Boyd signing off.